Hey everybody, good morning. I'm Tom Moran, Digital Content Specialist here at Provisio, the largest Salesforce implementation partner solely for human services. And welcome to this webinar called From Burnout to Breakthrough, Grant Strategy in the Age of AI. We really appreciate that you carved out some time from your busy schedules for this conversation this morning. So on that note, let's just get straight to it with a simple but hard truth that you all know. Grant writing today is hard because expectations are shifting fast. First off, there's a lot of funding uncertainty, and you're also trying to meet growing demands from funders who want more data, more outcome reporting, and tighter impact stories. They're also asking not just what you do, but how you track outcomes, how you report results, and how your systems back it all up. And you're trying to answer all those questions over and over and over again, and probably with a small team. AI can definitely help with all of that, but only if it's fed with accurate, structured, meaningful data with a comprehensive and secure CRM like Salesforce. Now, our goal this morning isn't to try to dazzle you with hype about AI. It's really just to ground you in real practical insights on how it's actually being used right now in the world of grants and what it really takes to build a data ecosystem that supports this kind of innovation. We want to show how AI can support your essential human workers, not replace them, so they can stop spending hours on repetitive boilerplate applications and start focusing on high value strategy and storytelling. Now, while there's a ton of opportunities for AI in the grant writing space, there are pitfalls as well, and we're going to be sure to highlight where those pitfalls are so you don't fall into them. Today, we're going to kick off with a candid conversation between Provisio Chief Strategy Officer Craig Mackey and VP of Mason Consulting Group Fergal Reed about big picture challenges facing grant writers and how AI can help. Mason Consulting specializes in fundraising and grant writing strategy for nonprofits of all sizes, and we're really thrilled that Fergal could join us today to share his expertise. And then Provisio Chief Innovation Officer Erica Cox is going to dig into the technical side of things and reveal key data strategy tips so you can prepare to harness AI yourself. And one more thing, we're going to have a live Q&A at the end, so please drop your questions in the chat as we go.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, Fergal. How are you?
Not too bad, Craig. How are you, my friend?
Very good. Very nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Excited to talk about this fundraising, grant writing, AI. What does it mean? And how do we reshape maybe how we think? And to kind of set the stage a little bit for, I think, more the context of what the health and human services feels like for those that have been doing it a while and what we've sort of done historically over time, which a lot of organizations, when we think about grant writing and fundraising, and that notion we had to do those same repetitive tasks, like what's your mission, what's your vision, why do you care, but like that writing over and over and over again. That's one thing that I think we can talk about, like how can we do that better moving forward. But that was also frustrating in the light that a lot of us, guilty as charged, worked in organizations where we may have applied for more grants than we should have, and they may have taken us a little bit on mission drift, but it was, we can get money, it will help us pay for these other things. We're always trying to spread administrative cost over as many grants as possible. And so maybe we chased some grants that weren't strategically in our best interest. So if we hold on to that notion and move forward into this new world, which is, let's assume that you do have all of the data and you have the strategy and you have AI and you can look at the world differently now with those tools available. How might that shape differently the strategies that you use as an organization going forward? On what opportunities are you going after? How are you going after them? And how are you going to tell your story about why you should be the one to receive it? I'm super excited to hear how you coach people through that, how you help organizations think about how do you align all that stuff in this new world and tools that are available to us. So love to hear how you just get people started or sort of reframed around how maybe they need to think differently about fundraising, grant writing in their organizations with tools available to us now that can really help.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really critical and obviously time wise, it's a perfect moment, I think, to discuss some of these broader issues. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who works in development in the nonprofit space that hasn't had to always wear multiple hats and deal with multiple issues and multiple timelines. And just when you feel like you've maybe got a little bit of a handle and you've got through the first cycle, here comes all these different things that changes again. And it's funny when you think about it, it feels a little bit like the grants world is on fire right now. But then it always has, right? It's just a different kind of fire. Previously we had COVID, and that was almost a fire of incredible potential. All the non-profit community was rallying around, helping nonprofits to survive and make their way through the difficult time. And now we have a little bit of a different thing because we sort of have a timeline that comes along with it. So you have these federal grants. I was doing a little bit of research and thought, obviously, for this conversation. And in the last 9 months, 250-ish federal proposals have either ceased, changed, been repackaged, or came out across all the initiatives. And obviously that's challenging in itself, but when you get into it, it's kind of challenging for three different reasons. One, you have an almost institutionalized approach to how you used to submit grants. That's out the window. Then you have smaller government bodies that have their money federally that have a time-sensitive window in which to offload it. So they're producing faster turnover RFPs. Grants that would take 3 months that you would have to plan and submit are now having 2-week, 3-week turnovers, which is kind of crazy. And then the obvious knock-on effect of that right now is that when federal funding has been cut and stopped, and it looks like it's going to be that way for 3 to 4 years. In fact, it's never going to go back to the way it was. We should just acknowledge that now. Any funding alignment will be brand new. What's going to happen there is that's putting an incredible strain on local foundations that are trying to support organizations that have relied heavily on federal funding and now all of a sudden don't have it. So what this means for the grant writer is that the people that you normally go to, your traditional and loyal funders, are now getting up to 10 times the amount of proposals. They're trying to spread things a little thinner if they can, so they're awarding more for less. So if you think about it practically, I sort of wanted to start off by saying to my fellow grant writers, like, I know what you're going through. I know it is not easy. I know we have a breakdown of how many proposals we think we need to submit to hit our goals, and that's probably tripled now. We're in a volume game. So back to your earlier point, Craig, there's this almost reflex where you want to look at everything that's out there and figure out a way to apply for everything, right? And then here comes AI, and people are promising it as this silver bullet that'll take care of all that for you. AI is an incredible tool, and we're going to talk a little bit about all the different ways that you can practically use it, even just baby steps, in order to help what it is that you want to do. But I will have to tell you straight now, it is a double-edged sword. You want to make sure, and when you talked about how we coach people, the one thing that we do, the first thing that we do at Mason is that we level set with our clients. What is it that your nonprofit does and that you think does uniquely or as well as or better than any other organization that are out there? What is your funding target? And critically, what is your strategy for how you're going to manage the grant cycle? Because when we're in this fire sale mentality, everybody just wants to put out grant after grant after grant after grant. And you're right. It's mission creep. And what happens is AI, if used improperly, can help you sound like you do all these things for this 100 grant opportunities faster. And it won't work. It's going to put you in a serious pickle afterwards. So what we always say to people is, how can you use AI to get all the task, the labor intensive, the multi-hat wearing tasks out of your way so that you can focus on what you always should be doing? Confirming what it is that you do that makes your nonprofit unique. Identifying the funders that best align with your mission as opposed to trying to make you sound like that you fit into theirs. And then bringing the two together by focusing on the relationship building and crafting a real authentic voice and representation of what your nonprofit does. There's this thing where, the reality is, and I know I've mentioned this before, a bit of a cautionary tale where, people are throwing out these 12 top prompting tips for AI so that you can sound like what the funder wants. And I know a lot of foundation officers, and they are telling me that in locally speaking, they are receiving almost the same grant from all these organizations that have prompted the same way, and they turn it over because people think that AI will write the grant for you. Do not think of it as your ghostwriter. Think of it as your executive assistant. And we'll get into a little bit about the practical things that you can do.
Yes, I'm happy that you brought that story up that you had told me before, and I think that that's the irony, right? That we think that AI just made this neat little unicorn for me, but the reality is it's the same model everybody's getting. And how do I know what you got? It just makes me feel special. But the reality is it's probably not as special as what I think. It's just faster than I could have done on my own. And I think that not just in this grant writing world, and I think we've talked about it a little bit around, things are not going to be the same. And the notion that they ever were is one of those sort of fool's errands. Like, it never was. It just feels a little more not same than it ever did, maybe right now. And that largely has to do with, we've had some pretty significant swings politically. We also are coming off of the heels of, as you said, COVID, which was, you could get grant money for anything under the sun. If you said somehow COVID had something to do with it, you could get paid for it. And we lived very well for 4 years in nonprofits doing things like that. That doesn't exist anymore. And the reality of where we were at in, let's say, 2017, 18, 19, there was a real momentum push towards whole person care. Can you tell the whole story? And for old school social workers like me, I'm like, yeah, dude, that was always the point. Jane Addams had a whole house built on it. We just now have data that can help us tell that whole story, but that's always the story we've been trying to tell. We've just been limited sometimes in our ability to get the backup to say why. Talk to me a little bit more about, we had talked about using AI to help, one, internally, look at your data from your programs, pull out the insightful stuff to help you build the reports to do all of that. That's one part of it. But then also using said data out against the other people out there and telling that story, and how we need to be particularly careful that we are monitoring both for any hallucinations or any interpretations that, while they look right on paper, are absolutely not correct. And we need to make sure we're always minding. And to your point, executive assistant, not replacement of the human writing the grants. So talk to me a little more about that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, people talk a little bit about how the concern is that funders, for example, I don't want to use AI because funders may use AI to screen for AI, ironically, and that they don't want to see it, and it might disqualify, it might do everything else, and ironically, they're not wrong as to why they want to do it. They may be a little misaligned in their thinking, but what funders want you to do, and this is when I talked about using AI to help with strategy or to allow you the time to work on strategy. This makes its way through every philosophical to practical step when it comes to grant writing. And let me kind of explain on that a little bit. So the reason that funders are concerned about AI is because A, they don't want plagiarism. They don't want your nonprofit to rip anybody else off, but they also don't want your nonprofit to sound like anybody else. They want to know why you're unique, which is what I was talking about before. And then they also, and most critically, want to make sure that every nonprofit opportunity, every grant opportunity asks for, what is the state of the union in the issue that you see? What is it that you're trying to address? How does your nonprofit address it specifically, right? So, and proving that involves some of the data points that you talked about. And what happens is, a bad use of AI, it will fabricate, it will hallucinate, it'll try so hard to give you the right answer, it will make things up. And we did this. We even asked it legal questions, and it would pull up and cite precedent and things that never happened, that they don't exist. They'll quote sources even that when you go to them, they don't really work. So applying that trust but verify logic is really, really important. But here's the way that practically it can help. There is so much that development staff have to go through in order to submit a grant. It's not just the writing of the narrative, it's understanding what the program is trying to do, understanding the agency's alignment and where it wants to go with its goals, understanding what it is that the funder is trying to do in the community. So practically speaking, think of all the different ways AI can help you if you think of it as a strategist, of a type of a vetting assistant, a think tank, something to bounce ideas off. So practically speaking, for example, you can take the materials that your program staff have put together and use AI to provide a very high level summary that is in common sense language that cuts out the jargon and explains and summarizes exactly what your program does. You can then use AI to look at the funding opportunity or the web page of the funder and their alignment, and then test it. You can ask it, thinking as a grant strategist, does what we do align up with what they do? And if not, drop it. Don't try and make it sound like you're going to have that opportunity, because it's the very mission creep that we talked about. Instead, use that process to very, very quickly vet a bunch of funding opportunities and prioritize the ones that really do align with your mission. The other thing that you can do, and this is the sort of the meta fourth wall step, is you literally draft something and ask AI to review it based on those funding requirements. Does this make sense? Does this tell you what it is that our agency does? If it doesn't, something's not written right. I'm sure Erica will talk about this later, but data, writing, making an argument is no different. What you put in is what you get out. So whenever you're thinking practically, I think my organization aligns with this funder based on this, and this. Have it vetted. Have it match it up and come up with an opportunity. Have it take those 990s, all those inaccessible financial documents to those of us who aren't financiers, and have it really turn around and test the organization's voting record against what it says on the website that it supports. So this organization says it supports human services, arts, A, B, and C. But when you actually test the 990s and who it's funded over the last 3 to 4 years, a small percentage maybe are the type of organization that you are. Cut them. Move on to another one that really will align, and use the time to develop your strategy and to promote your uniqueness in terms of how you write.
I've always relied heavily on people like you in the organizations that I worked, because I struggled mightily in wrapping my head around this the duality of the writing for these concepts, especially to like foundations and folks like that. So let's assume you've done everything that you've said, like, here's what we say we do, right? Which in and of itself is a challenge. Mm-hmm. If you ask most organizations, what do you do? They can tell you the programs they have, mm-hmm. right? Great. But I'm not sure that's what we're really talking about or what really matters, which is, but why are you different? There's lots of people that have behavioral health contracts that provide behavioral health. Why you? What's different? I think that story, and love to hear more about how do you tell that and the uniqueness about what makes your organization special.
Yeah, because it's a really good and critical question.
Hold it with this lens too, though. Because the irony of what happens in a lot of these grant cycles is, albeit that was a great story, we end up looking at, it's almost a deficits model of, great story, but you're in this zip code and there's already 2 of them and we can't fund anymore. So how do you wrestle with this? I could tell the best story in the world, we could be the best organization in the world, but I may or may not be successful by virtue of sort of a deficits model evaluation that I get screened against, which is it's going to go over here. And I always wrestled with, I get it, I understand why they're doing it, but how are we ever going to get better, or how do we find the opportunities to show off the special thing we're talking about?
Yeah. So again, a great question, and I'm just assuming no easy questions today. We're gonna be right into all of them. Yeah, I think this is one of the psychological challenges for every nonprofit. They work in a deficit, not just in terms of the rubric where proposals are scored, but also in how they treat themselves every day. There's almost this, we're trying our best, but we're just this, maybe there are other organizations out there that are doing it. I have never partnered or advised or coached a nonprofit organization that wasn't awesome, that there wasn't something unique about it that really made it stand out. And so you need time to flesh that out. To your point, you need time to test those kind of theories and to really sort of develop it. And you need the data to back up what you're saying. I don't come traditionally from a non-profit background. So whenever I started grant writing, I was thinking in terms of investment language, right? So a foundation that has a grant proposal isn't trying to necessarily qualify or disqualify your organization. There is a need in the community that aligns with its values that it is trying to solve that problem. right? So when you talk about what it is that you do have to marry those two things, which is what makes you a little bit unique in how, and it might be the approach. You know, you could do things that is largely the same checkboxes as other organizations, but you're definitely not executing and expediting the same way. But one of the real challenges for grant writers is that you only have so much time to write a grant. You only have so many characters in the actual proposal itself. And you have all these other attachments and logic models and all these different things that you have to apply in a grant, right? So we talked a little bit about this earlier, how AI can help you take care of a lot of those time-oriented tasks. It can generate logic models based on what you put in. It can make sure that, you know, things are in alignment. But to your point, have you ever said to yourself, Craig, not to turn it back on you a little bit, but how can I use AI in order to help my nonprofit stand out amongst a sea of other nonprofits that may be using AI to see if they can stand out, right? So it's that a robust kind of logic model. Have you ever asked AI?
This is where, and we only have a couple minutes left, and this is why I love talking to you, because we could do it all day. So I do ask, and I get that response.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about, just because AI says that and I believe it, the reality is most of us have to figure out how to get from outputs to outcomes to theoretically a causal pathway to prove, right? Just because I think I'm special, I can prove or count that I do a lot of them with a lot of different races or ages, or that doesn't mean I'm any good. It just means I did a lot of things.
That's
So how
true.
do you marry, I think I'm special and I can prove that what we do is good and it has materially more successful outcomes than my peers.
Yeah.
And that's
So
the part
imagine.
where it's like, how do we just keep going? So you got a minute. Tell me how you solve for that problem.
Yeah, what I would do, what I would do in 3 steps. I would note down everything that we do, that large volume of outputs that you're talking about. I would then put it into a GPT model or a large language learning model against the RFP for the nonprofit. And then I would also have a tone document that is written close or pulled from the language that I've used, that really sort of captures the heart and the anthem of what it is that our nonprofit does. And I'll say, acting as a grant reviewer for this foundation that is prioritizing these outcomes, and with everything that I am inputting about what we do, you tell me what will resonate in accordance with that funder and what 5 or 4 outcomes we should prioritize. The narrative is explaining the magic and how you do it, but don't ever come without proof as to how you can do it. And that is having them prioritize those key KPIs, the key performance indicators that will drive home what it is that proves that you're not just a well-feeling good story of an organization, but that you have a strategic model that goes from issue to impact to outcome.
Craig and Farrell, thank you so much. That was excellent. So now we're going to pass the baton to Provisio Chief Innovation Officer Erica Cox for some real practical use cases of how AI can be used for grant writing.
Thank you, Tom. So happy to be here today. Next slide, please, Maddie. As we discussed a bit, Fergal and Craig had some great examples of how AI can lighten the load for your grant team, but I just wanted to talk through a few others. One of the ones that struck me that's not on this page, though, they talked about, Fergal mentioned the word count or page count that's often in a grant application, and it brought to mind the old adage, if I'd had more time, I'd have written a shorter email. I think that taking your draft, writing it in your tone, in your voice, and then asking AI to shorten it for you and make it more concise is a really good use case that I hadn't added to this slide, but I will be for any future presentations. So we've already talked about researching funders, so using AI to research funders and make sure that it's a good fit, right? That that organization and that application are a good fit for your organization. Application support. Feed that application into a language model, pulling out deadlines, requirements, any red flags. Are there things that you know that your organization doesn't want to support or is unable to? Ask it, does this contain this requirement? Does it require XYZ? And it will tell you pretty easily and quickly and save you a lot of time and effort. Summarizing programs, drafting narratives to finding data gaps. We're going to talk about this one a lot more and how a unified system like Salesforce can make this far easier for you and your team. Client stories, surfacing the most compelling impact narratives automatically. So again, this requires you to have your data in a single place. At Provisio, we've often actually built a module that many of our clients are using, a client stories module, because we know that those things come up, and you've got a client who's got a great success story and something fantastic happened to them today, and you think you're going to remember it forever, and then grant time comes around and you completely space out. So how do you capture those in the moment so they can go back and find them, or your AI assistant can help you go back and find them quickly and easily later. And then admin relief, right? As we talked about, AI is not, it can be a really critical part of your team, but I don't think of it as a peer. Think of it as that executive assistant, an entry-level employee. You have to give it the tools and direction that it needs. And you certainly wouldn't put out an application that was written by a new employee or an intern without reviewing it first, and that's a critical piece. So an example would be an internal agent for your grant writing team that you could give it quick instructions, draft a letter of intent email, update the status, and notify the team that we're applying for this grant. That's all you have to type, and it could do all those things for you. It'll pop the email up so that you can confirm it, so that, again, you're not relying on it solely to perform on its own. So just a few examples in the Q&A. I look forward to discussing more and hearing some of your ideas. Next slide, please, Maddie. So really important, we've touched on this a bit, but whenever you're thinking about using AI in your organization, it's important to set proper guardrails. So I know a lot of AI can be kind of scary. People are a little leery of adopting it. So you may be thinking that if you're not ready to talk about it, you're just going to shelve it and wait and see what happens. But what's happening is your savviest staff are likely using it already. So if you haven't equipped them with guidance and you're just saying don't use it, they're probably using it anyway. So it's important that you enable and educate your team so that you're using it safely. One of the important things is, are they using LLMs, large language models, like ChatGPT, OpenAI? Are they using them in a way that your data is not being used for training purposes, right? It's not being used to train the model. It's not going into the public domain. Things like that are really important for you to ensure are safe. And we'll talk about ways that platforms like Salesforce safeguard your data. Define your organizational AI principles. So clarify your values. Do you have to note, for example, that when you're putting out content that it was assisted by AI or written by AI? How are you using that within your team? What's the level of transparency when you're using it internally, when you're using it externally? Develop policies before you go ahead and jump into a pilot. Have those things documented so that it's not, you're getting ahead of it, not the other way around. Create a governance structure. Whose responsibility is it within your organization to provide oversight, risk review, and accountability for the responsible and ethical use of AI? And then, as we talked about a bit, plan for error, bias, and hallucinations. These should always be drafts. If you're feeding something into an AI prompt, you should always build a review process and validation into that. One example we recently at Provisio had a presentation on how we can better use AI within our delivery cycle and our sales cycle, like throughout our organization. We have a cultural norm of putting little cat memes into our internal presentations. And we asked AI to create a cat holding a little sign, and the cat had 5 paws. So you do have to be careful. And the first person didn't notice it, but we left it in as a really good example of those hallucinations and the need for review. All right. So as we talked about AI, Fergal had mentioned this, or Craig, I can't remember, but the quality of what you get out is directly correlated with what you put in. So if you have an integrated platform where the context, the data, and the AI model are all in one big package, it's going to unlock a lot of capabilities for you that might otherwise be either more challenging or not possible. So we see here that prompts in a Salesforce context are coming in from the UI, but the data is supporting those prompts as well. And then there's a secure gateway where it's fed to the model and then through a secure gateway fed to the UI. So it's all one singular package. And that's including both AI, like your standard CRM. And we'll get into more of that later. So it's all a contiguous package, which, like I said, unlocks a lot of capabilities. But it's important that that data is safe, secure, and protected. So it's not just important that you're informing it. So you could open up a public chat GPT, no subscription, dump your data into it. But what that means is that your data has now become part of the public domain. So you need to make sure that when you are feeding your uniqueness into models, that it remains your uniqueness. And you're not just sharing that with the world in a way that you would not want to. So the Einstein trust layer provides that. So it's secure prompts with context. So any data sent from Salesforce, a Salesforce prompt to the large language model, and you can choose your LLM in Salesforce. So it has multiple choices, but you can also bring your own. So if you've developed one internally or someone on your team has, you can do that as well. But personal data is masked before it's sent, and then it's unmasked upon return. So for instance, I have Bob's name and address. It substitutes that with an encoded mask, and then it sends it to the LLM. The LLM puts Bob's name, fake name, masked name, into the response. And when it comes back, it goes through another transition where it swaps that out, and now I see Bob. So really important as a way to keep your data safe. Dynamic grounding, so all responses are tailored to your real-time data. As long as you include that in your prompt, obviously. Zero data retention. So this is something you should look for in any AI product that you're using, that prompts and responses are forgotten immediately after use. And then really critical, especially for internal agents. So in the Salesforce context, you can have, when we get to there's lots of different layers of AI, but when we get to that agentic layer of AI where it's a real autonomous extension of your workforce, those internal AIs that are acting on an internal user's behalf are permission aware. So they have the same permissions and same data access rules as the person who's utilizing them. So really important in keeping your data safe. Next slide, please. So what are some of the tools within the Salesforce toolbox that really power impact? From a data readiness perspective, as I said, having everything in one place. So whether you're using nonprofit cloud, whether you're using NPSP, you're just on Sales Cloud, you have custom built on the core platform, having that data there to feed your model. And then we know that there are systems that your program teams are using that require mandated systems, right? So they may not be able to have everything in Salesforce, or they may just not have everything in Salesforce yet. Salesforce's data cloud is a very powerful platform that can unify data from multiple systems. So it even has zero copy options with things like Snowflake, AWS. So if your organization has a data lake or data warehouse, that data can be brought seamlessly into data cloud and harmonized and unified with your CRM data. Harmonization is the process of making your data all aligned to a common model. So the way in which data is represented in, for instance, an outside system or your ERP system it's probably structured differently, and you've got different different choice values, things like that from your CRM data. Harmonization is bringing that together into a common model and common language, data language. And then unification is identifying that this Erica Cox, who may have interacted with my organization in one way, is the same Erica Cox, even if perhaps I used a different email address. Super common when we look across our donor databases in particular, that it's unifying those and identifying me as the same person and building a complete picture of me. We've got MuleSoft and a host of open APIs within Salesforce that can connect those legacy systems. So can be used to bring that data into Data Cloud or directly into the CRM to make sure that you've got that solid data foundation upon which to build. And then there's Slack AI. So if you've not used Slack, we've used it as an organization since right before the pandemic. It saved us during the pandemic, quite frankly. So it's an incredible collaborative platform, but really excited about the fact that since last week, AI is available for any paid version of Slack. So very excited to see how that is going to play out. We're in the process of implementing it within Provisio, and really excited to see the advantages that's going to bring. And it's really integrated directly with the CRM. So we'll be able to see Slack from within Salesforce CRM and vice versa, see CRM records directly within Slack with very little implementation needed. And then when we get past the data readiness, what are the options for AI in action within the Salesforce platform? So for a long, long time, Salesforce has had Einstein. Einstein's been a buzzword in the Salesforce ecosystem for years. So that includes features like next best action. So, if you're doing broader donor management, for instance, what is the next ask I should make of this particular donor, or the next interaction that I should prioritize with them? And that can be true in the grants too. Talk about, when you've got those grants in your CRM, Fergal talked about great ways in which you can use AI to align the mission of the grantor or the grant application itself with your mission. If you've got enough context within the database about grants that you have historically received or not, Einstein can start scoring those for you. So which is the most likely to convert, right? Which one are you most likely to get based on historical information about those? Prompt fields. So prompt fields can be used outside of Agentforce for anything like writing an email or creating a summary field within an account or a program. Within Nonprofit Cloud in particular, there is the ability built in to do a program summary. So that is built into the system. It's general availability. Coming soon is a Nonprofit Cloud agent. It's really more focused on case managers at this point and helping them with their internal work with clients, but know that they have others on their roadmap as well that are more fundraising and grant focused. And then, of course, we have Agentforce. I talked about it a bit, but agentic AI is the next level of where you really have an internal worker, right? We're really talking about knowledge workers now, AI knowledge workers. So in this particular context, internal teammate, think about it as an internal teammate or assistant for tasks like research, drafting, or follow-up. As an example, sorry, Maddie, could you go back 1 minute? So as an example, you could give it that series of tasks that we talked about. And with the exception of the Nonprofit Cloud specific items that I talked about, all of the CRM features above, that I mentioned above are now available with Salesforce Foundations. So Foundations is a $0 add-on that gives you the tools you need to explore AI use cases with little or no investment. So there's no initial cost, but it's a consumption model. So that's what we're going to be seeing with many of these AI and data use cases, that rather than being a per user license model, it's a consumption model. So there's no initial cost, as I said, to Foundations. There are initial consumption credit allotments that are enough to prove out a use case. It provides the tools you need to monitor consumption, which will be really important to both calculate the ROI for your organization, the potential ROI of a solution, and ensure you aren't incurring unbudgeted costs. But you can get some real work done within those consumption credits. So I encourage you to take a look and see, if you are on Salesforce already, take a look at what that can provide. For example, knowledge articles are something that 3 knowledge licenses are included. So if knowledge has been something that you've wanted to explore, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. I know that one of the questions we had in the someone submitted as they registered was, can we build a base of information about our organization that can be used for an AI model? And knowledge would be a great way to do that. You could then build prompts that could be utilize both the knowledge, so those articles that are written about your organization, about your programs, as well as the data summaries of those programs that are all in one platform. All right, so here at Provisio, we think that we're at the forefront of data. We have a data practice, a specific data practice that focuses on looking holistically at your data and goals as an organization and making sure that those two things align. So we can help you clarify your vision, defining objectives for AI and what you'd like to get out of it, assessing that data and technical landscape. I was just on site with a client today and watched some of these strategic sessions, and they were really exciting to see. Uncovering gaps and opportunities, aligning your tools and data around your goals. Preparing and unifying your data, so cleansing it, mapping it, restructuring it, that harmonization piece that I talked about earlier. Making sure that your Salesforce environment is optimized for AI and can make the best use out of it. Helping you build ethical learning models, putting those guardrails in place, and then creating considered rollout plans to make sure that we're building staff confidence and easing adoption.
All right. Yeah, Erica, thank you very much. I'm going to kick off this Q&A section with a question actually from Dennis Pierce. And he's wondering, are the features that, Erica, you just mentioned for AI, are they already a part of NPSP or are they add-ons?
Foundations is an add-on, but it's a $0 add-on. So it is something that you can enable yourself. There is a contract to be signed because, like I said, there are possible implications that if you go over those allotments that you get, you would be charged for that. So there is a contract to sign, but it is self-service.
Okay. And what kinds of internal data do organizations really need to start taking advantage of AI and grant writing? And I'll obviously open that up to everybody.
Well, I know how I always answer that. And Fergal is going to tell you more about the practical side, and Erica can tell you the technical side. But I always start with, you need data you believe. So if you hand it out to everybody on your staff, do they look at it and go, I believe this? Or do they look at it and go, we all know that's kind of right, or it's sort of close, but it doesn't include this Excel file or Debbie's special information that's not represented, whatever the case may be. Unless there's a full thumbs up on we believe it, I would go back and test it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the key outcomes, people will imagine that it might be a trick question by a funder, but really it does. I can't overstate the simplicity of it and the grant writer's tendency to overcomplicate it. So when you're looking at an RFP, if you're looking at a foundation proposal that is asking you to address a certain need and your mission aligns with it, what are those 3 to 4 big metrics that your agency or your particular program does, and how are those metrics proved in terms of impact? It can be as simple as individuals served. Every program typically has metrics where they want to move somebody around a pathway to success. It could be even return on investment, for the funder themselves, considering how much their investment is, what the outcome is going to be. And I will tell you a little secret: for foundations and for proposals, it can be about depth as much as it can be about width. So if your organization serves a smaller amount of people, and like you say, Craig, you're worried about how do you stand out amongst the other ones, what is that quality of care or quality of the service or how you execute it and your wraparound supports that can make the 30 to 40 people that you serve intensely be as valuable to foundation as the 100 people that might get 1 to 3 touches a month.
Sure. And how is Agentforce different than just using ChatGPT for grant writing, of course? What is it about Agentforce that makes it different than just dropping a prompt into ChatGPT?
Agentforce is an autonomous knowledge worker. So it's not a single threaded prompt. So a prompt can be a part of what Agentforce's instructions are. So just like a new employee, you give an agent very clear instructions, and it is not to deviate from those instructions. So you give it a clear job or jobs, and those are the only jobs it's going to do. It will refuse to engage in other ways. So if you want to play around with it, all of Salesforce's support. So if you go to help.salesforce.com, you've got an agent there that you can interact with. You can start asking it weird things, and you can see that it will say, I'm here to help you with Salesforce questions and support. So we'll only do the job that you've given it to do. But that job can be more complex than just a single prompt. So for example, I could say, do this prompt, but I could also say, update my team, send an email. It can act on your behalf and it can do so autonomously. So it can update records within your CRM, for example. It can be triggered either by an individual action. So I, as a user within Salesforce, can be on a program record and say, please summarize this program for me. And I can give it some prompt words, or I can have something that triggers that and it's working behind the scenes on my behalf. But again, the idea is that it can autonomously perform a series of tasks, not just one-off. You don't have to create the prompt every time. There's also prompt templates. So it is doing the prompt repeatedly. So if you know that you're always going to want, like, program summary is a good one, you don't have to rewrite that prompt every time. It's stored for you. It's pulling in the data like a mail merge would do and giving it that contextual reference points.
Sure. All right. Well, all very exciting stuff. Craig, Erica, Fergal, thank you so much for sharing your insights this morning. And thank you to everybody who joined the webinar and everybody who is just watching this on LinkedIn right now. This was From Burnout to Breakthrough: Grant Strategy in the Age of AI. We really appreciate your time this morning. We know you're dealing with a lot, but hopefully you gained some actionable insights today to help support your grant strategy. You can contact Provisio at provisiopartners.com if you would like to explore how we can help your organization with custom Salesforce solutions and AI. Be sure to keep an eye out for an email from Provisio with more helpful resources to take your organization to the next level. And if you're looking for help with strategy for grant writing or fundraising, head to Mason Consulting Group's website, which is themasongroup.com. And there's a hyphen between Mason and Group, and we'll share out more information about Mason Consulting as well in some of the follow-up emails. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.